And what is really interesting is this ends up becoming part of the discussion, and actually, as you, if like, you could even end up having an exchange with your student. You know, if the student goes in, views their grades, they could post a comment, and you could actually keep like a type of threaded discussion that's involved in there. So if I submit this comment.
But this is for the individual student to read
Yes,
then,
this is
right?
only
This
for
is
the individual
private
student.
conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's a private conversation you can have, and you can keep a record of it if it's all based on the comments.
Is it asynchronous or synchronous? I mean, is it happening?
It's asynchronous.
It's asynchronous.
Because the student would have to go in and wanna check their grades, see their
Right.
feedback, and then post them. Now here, notice you could put a file attachment, so if you needed to attach something that you wanted to provide the student, you know, that you could do that. And then this is what I was talking about, the media comment. Now, I'm not really gonna do it right now, but if you want later to see, we could do it. But you could come in here, you can allow, and basically I could record my 10-second feedback. And then, so instead of that text space, I would have it there, which I would think for foreign languages could be really important, especially like you said, if you need to correct certain pronunciation or something like that, where they need to hear something. Let alone it can just be convenient if you know, don't like to
Quicker.
type, and you could, quicker.
Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
right?
This
Matthew
would be
uses
particularly
a
helpful
lot.
for you in 105.
Okay.
You may want to think about that.
Yeah, because that's what I was doing in my class. I was teaching a class on social media last semester, and I was giving feedback to my students using that voice record, well, that webcam recording feature.
Mm-hmm.
So they were submitting their papers or whatever, they were blogging, and so they hadn't blog post anywhere else and whatever. And so I read the whole thing, and I kept a couple of points in my head, and then I would just fire up the webcam, talk for 1 or 2 minutes, and then that was my feedback. So I graded them using a rubric, and then gave them feedback orally, and they loved that feature. They really, the students were really, they really felt like I was reading their stuff, and that I was really, giving them, coaching them in getting better. And the other thing that's nice about that speed grader feature is that you can actually say, well, I'm not super what you've submitted is not super great, and if you change a couple of things, I could adjust your grade or whatever. So if you really want students to improve on what they've already submitted, you can actually give them some feedback there, and then they can resubmit something else, and then you can regrade them and whatever. So if your goal is to really help them, build on whatever they've already submitted, then you can actually use that speed grader feature to get the students to work again on some of the stuff that you think they've missed.
Now, this time I just jumped into the assignment tool, because there is something I wanted to point out. Now, these are the groupings that we had made when we talked about how you're going to group assignments, and possibly this will lead into your grade book. But everything, every quiz, every assignment actually ends up becoming or get classified as an assignment. So that's why you're noticing here, this test part 1, test part 2, these were your 2 quizzes, okay? Because remember we said there was 4 points. The first 2 we were using the quiz tool, and the second 2 we were using the assignment tool. So I'm just going to kind of skip to this one because it's an assignment tool, just to give you a sense of the student then had submitted something. So let's see, let me go to speed grader for this. This was the question up there, that was what it was. And I think this is the blog posting. They're supposed to post a blog. Okay, so now if I go to speed, you see I know I have 2 submitted. So of my students so far, I haven't graded them, so this is, I can go in and grade these now. So here's, I noticed I did it all in English. Sorry about that, but, so this is what I typed. I was given a text area to type in, and the students can create their posting, and they can post. Now, over here, because we want you to grade with a rubric, you can actually pull up the rubric right here.
Right there.
Okay. I also wanted to point out that under each of these categories, which you're probably familiar with since you've probably seen the rubrics, there's a longer description that what we've enabled here is what would be expected for this. Okay, so if you were in the Spanish 200, which is like what this class is, then I know for functionality, this is what we're looking for. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
this is
that's the
this is
language you
ours.
create. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, that that's in these longer descriptions. And all you really need to do is, you can click on it, notice it'll populate the grade. I'm just gonna randomly do this.
Oh, you
Okay.
just click on the box.
You can click, okay?
And it puts the point value into the thing for you.
And so now this is 14 out of 20, and I wanna save this, okay? And notice in this case, this is the one thing, because I'm gonna have to go back and show you the quiz, because in the case of the assignments, whatever you click for this rubric, the grade is going to go right there into the grade. Okay, we've made that
Okay.
association, okay? And again, same thing, you can add comments, you can attach things, you can do the video if you want, you know, media recording. All right, and so now I've graded the student, and then technically I can just go on to the next one. Bruno hasn't submitted yet, in fact, I don't think.
Well, you can see what's submitted, if you use the drop down. So if you click on the little arrow, you can see the list of
okay.
students and who has submitted and who has been graded and all that stuff.
So wait, the blue box indicates
This is a drop
Yeah,
down,
if it's blue, it
this
means
is
that
between
he
all the
hasn't,
students
it's
in the
submitted
class.
but not graded.
but not graded,
Yeah, so
okay,
this
and
is, yeah, so this
grade
one's been graded,
has not yet submitted.
this one, yeah, see, not graded, this one
Mhm.
says not submitted, so you
And
can see.
lukewarm,
Not
oh, there it's the not submitted.
Cause we only did the one element,
Okay.
okay, alright, so, but I am going to go back instead of grading here, cause I want to show you how the rubric works.
I didn't mind it much.
Um,
It was just more convenient.
Okay, let me go back. And up here, notice there's a link to the grade book, a link to course home, you have some handy links to take
Yeah,
you
it
to
seems like
navigate, okay?
The
But-
navigation seems.
Okay, so actually though, I'm going to,
Intuitive.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna take you
That
to,
rubric factor.
this is part 2, isn't it? I hope it was part 2, yeah. Now, this is the one that's the quiz, but because the quiz is open-ended and you have to read all the students' responses, we actually wanted you also to take the rubric into consideration, okay? So now what happens here when we do this? Okay, I think B is the only one that's taken something here. So of course you can see the students' work, and I was just making up a few questions in English here. And I didn't do too well, I'm sure. But now I can view the rubric, all of that is exactly the same, okay? I can click, I can do, you know, whatever I need to do, okay? And then I can save it, okay? But I wanted to show you something. Notice I had gotten 13 points on this rubric. It does not put it in here. Now, the reason it doesn't, it's just different. It's how the quiz tool is being handled. So you will have to come over here and put that 13 in. I mean, it'll all be calculated for you, but it's the one time you're gonna have to actually put that in, for your points.
So it shows at the bottom of the assessment portion, and then you just
Right.
plug it into
And
the
then
top.
notice as soon as you put it in here,
Then it goes in.
it'll go
right.
there for you,
Okay.
okay? And, you know, that's something that through features it might change over time, but right now that is how the tool works.
And this is in the quiz portion?
This is a quiz,
Okay.
when you use the quiz, so it's really only applies to the second part of the 4 parts. And it's because it's using the quiz tool, but we wanted to apply the rubric. Because what's exciting about all this is by using the same rubric, there are outcomes reports that we can generate so that you can see what your students have done.
That's great.
At the
Very
end of
important
this
to us,
lesson.
right?
So now, this is really kind of covering, I kind of showed you what the students do as far as submitting. I kind of showed you, I can show you how a student submits an assignment if you need to see that differently from a quiz, I'm happy to show you that. And I showed you what you would do as an instructor. Do you have any questions? Cause I'm trying just to keep it pretty
I
straightforward.
haven't had that much of a chance to look around yet, so I
Okay.
don't, there's nothing that's like immediately coming to mind.
Okay.
It seems like it's all pretty straightforward and probably more a matter of just kind of getting on there and becoming a little more familiar with it, right?
Well, then just a couple other things I'll show you. If you needed to upload a file, for example,
Okay.
as a resource.
Handouts.
Right.
Okay, so there's the files tool, if you're familiar with Sakai, it's very much like the resources
resource.
area,
Right.
okay? And notice here that you can add a folder, you can add files. So if you want to organize them, add your folder first, maybe this is unit 1 or whatever you're doing. And then, make sure you're in that folder and then upload a file to that folder, or that type of thing. So, but, so it's as simple, if you're just adding a file, it's no different, you kind of browse, select your file, open it, and it'll be uploaded.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, and then, also, I guess I'm gonna go back to the assignments for a minute, because
Just
go ahead.
A difference in the file system is that you can actually upload files that are not going to be visible to your students unless they're used somewhere else. So we had some of those issues before in Sakai, like for instance, if you wanted to use a couple of images for your quizzes, but you didn't want the students to go to the resources and see them before they took the quizzes, there was really not an elegant way to do that. In Canvas, you can make folders basically hidden until they're used somewhere else, files or folders. So basically, you can create a folder that's called Images for Quizzes, and then put your all your resources that you would use within quizzes in there. And then when you're building your quiz, you can link to those resources. They're gonna show up to the students when they're taking the quiz, but they won't show up if they go directly to the files tool.
So it's like a hidden, a private.
It's kind of a private
yeah.
space that is going to become public and visible to the
As needed.
student in the context that you set as appropriate.
Okay, that's actually making me think of a question, because potentially I might not want them to have certain handouts until, print this out the day before class or the day of
Mhm.
class or whatever, that kind of thing. I don't want them to have it a lot in advance. It's
Yeah,
also possible
you can lock
to
that,
do-
yeah, you can put dates on folders and add those folders become available as the, maybe a day before class or whatever. You could set that up from the get-go if you wanted to.
And
Remember
likewise,
something?
yeah, we can, and likewise, even in the modules tool, like when you set that module, like we sequence those 4 parts to the
Right.
quiz. If you were sequencing some course content and you wanted them to read at a certain time, I mean, you can set stipulations within the module sequentially that, you can't open this until you've done this, and, you have a quiz, you have to have a certain grade before I'm gonna let you move on. I mean, there's all sorts of options you do have.
Very
okay?
handy.
And so one of those things could be your asset though, I mean, you could go get this document, it could be part of those 4, 5, or 6 little elements that make up the module for that particular
So
lesson.
before you show up in
Okay.
class,
So-
make sure that you read this, that you watch this video, that you answer this, that you post this discussion on the discussion board.
Right.
Or whatever, so that would
Take
keep
this
like check
grammar
marks and
quiz
and
or
whatever.
whatever,
And then they
right.
come to class, they're prepared because and you can check which students have actually,
Done it.
done their work before they showed up in class. Cause that's the biggest challenge with classes in general.
Yeah.
Students come to class unprepared, they haven't done their reading. So this is kind of a way to turn your class into more of a hybrid class in some way, shape or form, so
Right.
that students can do stuff on their own, go through these modules on their own because it's more of a knowledge acquisition or whatever. And then when they come to class, you can really have those discussions and whatever, and you know that people have all been exposed to the same content
Alright, so Matt, if they, we could step through some of it, so when we go to handouts, then, where do they make it private? I haven't done this yet. so-
It's on, you have to get out of that edit mode, so you have to click enter or something.
Mhm.
So if you hover over, you see there's a little lock on the side.
Mhm.
So if you click on the lock, it's gonna tell you, okay, you can leave it locked until you manually unlock it, or you
That's
can,
Okay.
yeah, or you can let the students download the file if it's used somewhere else.
If I link it to them,
Yeah.
meaning you as an instructor have linked it somewhere.
But the other thing, if you unlock that, just uncheck that box, uncheck the other one, and you see that you can
Oh,
set
nice,
dates
okay.
as well.
Alright, so you just set up a date and it can be open from this time to that time.
Yep.
Okay, that seems, very helpful, thank you.
But that locks the whole folder, doesn't it?
Well, you can make it on a file level or a folder level.
Okay.
It's really up to you, and that's if you want to use the files tool itself. If you want to use the modules instead or whatever, then you could set those conditions in the modules and just hide the file system altogether. Cause the files are gonna be used somewhere else, usually you're gonna put some context in, when you read this, you should pay attention to these things or whatever, and then you put the link to the file. So you might not want to give students access to the files at all, because they're gonna have links that points to those resources later.
We'll show you,
Like,
I'll show
okay,
you when
for
we
example,
create
it
a
could be
module.
then perhaps in the course calendar, that's really what you're saying, right? Rather than having a separate file and directing them to that in some,
You
that
could
could
make
be
it a
like right into
calendar
the,
item.
Under modules.
or
Under
But
under.
it's
modules,
probably
you
easier
create
just to
assignments are-
create modules,
Yeah.
and we'll show
Okay.
you how, if you create a module. I just wanted to show you that on a single, like this is just a single file, this is an image, so you have the same lot.
Okay.
So you can see, I think that was your question.
Yeah, like if you're trying to set, because I'm thinking potentially to try to set up, the first part of the course or whatever with handouts and really date specific, some of them, so then that makes it easier, right?
So before
Not
we go
just in the
create a
folder.
module though, I just, one other thing I don't wanna forget, and that's like in assignments, when you might need to edit an assignment because of instructions or different things that you have to
Mhm.
still do, I just wanna make sure you know how to do that. So we know, for example, this was, an assignment.
Like the composition, actually, the composition would be a great example. Oh, no, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, we could have gone to the composition one, I was just.
Because this is really what they will be doing. If you guys,
Okay.
during that period
I'll
of
go down
January
to the
1st to the
18th.
18th,
Mhm.
you
Okay.
can add the specific content to your compositions. You don't have to. You could
Okay.
just give them the traditional handouts you have. You can post them as files. But if you want to create the actual assignment using these features that Canvas has available, this is
Mhm.
what you would do. I will create those events for you depending on your
What
syllabus.
what I
Yes.
tell you then,
So if you
okay.
have 4 compositions, you will have a space there for 4 compositions.
Okay,
When you click on those, you will see that this is empty.